my finishing stages of my PhD, and I'm kind of sitting on the fence about what I want to do after this. So I absolutely love science and research, but I'm not sure whether I want to continue as a full-fledged lab researcher.
You have to be dedicated. You have to know that you want it if you want to be what you call a wet lab research scientist. So what are the other opportunities? There's science writing. There is science management. There's lots of things. For some of these, you can work for a scientific journal. For some of them, a postdoc is helpful. So, science writing or certainly as an editor at a journal, you're better off having done this postdoc. Also, a postdoc is very nice because you really get to see other ways of doing things. I had to decide when I finished my thesis whether I was going to return to being a dancer or whether to go into science. And I was so disappointed. I was so frustrated with my PhD. But then I said, I'll just give it a try. Science is actually really good fun. And, then the postdoc just went much better than my PhD, and so here I am.
It's a difficult transition to make.
Yes.
Is there something you would like to tell us? Because you had a similar transition.
Yes.
You did PhD in
yes.
immunology, and then
yes.
you went on to do something very different.
Yes.
So what did you consider when you did this transition?
So what advice can I give? I mean, I was an immunologist, and so my training had been, I was very interested in all sorts of stuff, so I used to go to seminars, so I had a vague idea. And then I applied to a bunch of places, and I went to all of them. I came from very good institutes, so fortunately I was invited to all of them. And I got a good impression from how the labs worked. I knew for sure that there was one thing I didn't want to do. Having been an immunologist, having had to grow cells, I didn't want to have anything to do with antibodies, monoclonal antibodies, even less. But I had applied in Cambridge to go to another lab, to Peter Lawrence, and Peter Lawrence had said, sorry, no space. But my neighbor, Mike Wilcox, has space. And since I wanted to see Cambridge, I wanted to see the lab, I thought, oh, well, I'll go and apply. And so I went to Pierre Champon, I went to Wally Schaffner, I went to David Horowitz, the ICF. I went to lots of good people. And I went to this one lab where I said, I don't want to go there because it's antibodies. Just not there. I went there. I loved it. I loved it. That's where I went. That's where I did my postdoc. So I think the most important lesson is you have to do what you like best. You have not to be cynical about your decisions. You don't have to say, if I go there, I get this many papers, and I meet this and that person. It's not going to work. If you don't like it, if you don't get on with it, with a PI, if you don't like the structure of the lab, if you don't like the competition, you have to find out in the lab whether the PI puts two people on the same project. Imagine, how horrible. You don't know that if you don't go there and talk to a person. So you have to know that you like what you're doing, because if you like what you're doing, you're going to do it well.
So what criteria you look for in a postdoc applicant, like recommendation, research papers?
I look for a spark of originality and thinking. So I want to see that the person who applies has thought about why they apply to me. And I want to see that there's some intelligence there. It seems trivial, but that's very important, and that shines out. So a good covering letter. That's the first step. If you don't have that, you're not even going to look at. And then the next step is, so it depends, publication is often hard. If you apply in your third year, you may not yet have a publication, but then, you'll have a project description that says, a brief project description of what you've done. I don't care I very rarely care about what expertises you have. So, that doesn't matter so much. The recommendations matter. So anybody who passes those first thresholds, absolutely recommendations matter.
What additional steps you can take to show that you are motivated in working in that topic, in that lab?
That's the main thing, really. That's the main thing. If you can convince the person that you've thought about what they're doing, and sort of formulate a few questions. If you just say, I've read your website, I think your research is the most exciting I've ever seen, I again say, well, you're sure. Anybody would say that. So really showing that you've looked into it more specifically. Of course, one thing you can do is, if your supervisor happens to know the person, or if your supervisor writes a note and says, this is a really well-trained student, it might help.
What about postdocs in the US versus
Well, people are worried about coming to Europe because of the language. I say go to good lab. EMBL is completely English. Dresden is completely English. My institute in Cologne University is completely English. The Barcelona CRG is completely English, even in Poland. So there are lots and lots of places where you get by with English. You can always learn a new language, that's fun. So, to buy your bread and milk, maybe you want to learn a new language. It used to be the case that Europe was very difficult with further career options. So if you want to have the option to stay on, it would have probably been easier in the past to stay in the United States. It's getting easier in Europe because the European Union is trying to make a sort of scientist's passport that allows scientists even within Europe to exchange more and will also allow foreigners to exchange more. So it's shifting a little bit. So having heard rumors about career in America and career in Europe, it's shifting. I can't deny that there are in some countries it may be more difficult than others, and that not all problems have been solved, but there's a will to solve them.